Hey everybody, as you can probably tell, we're living through some pretty unprecedented times in 2025. And despite what's going on out there at the world, I'm going to say something that's a little bit controversial. Because at the foundation, everything that happens out there is a reflection of what happens in here, in each of us. Because it's all energy, and how we harness this latent energy in our lives determines the quality of our experiences, circumstances, and ultimately the type of life we live. You can kind of say, according to quantum mechanics, that we do influence the future. Now, I know that's a tall order, but what we're going to talk about today might open your mind up to this and might actually help you shift out of a state where you might be worrying about the price of groceries or what happens next in the world or getting caught up in politics, and instead start playing an active role in creating a life that is truly worth living. I'm Dave. I run a company called Octave Leap, and I really help people shift into their ideal reality. And this is my good collaborator, Jade, and she's here to discuss this with me, this process of what we call quantum embodiment or embodied alchemy. And it's an innovative approach for shifting realities no matter how difficult or dire things look. So welcome, Jade. Thank you for joining me tonight.
Thank you, Dave. Thanks for having me. I'm
Yeah.
really looking forward to what we're going to talk about. I never know what's going to be unearthed in the moment, but yeah. How are you? You've been traveling around the world lately. How are you feeling?
I have been in so many different countries in the last month. So I just got out of a retreat in Costa Rica. I gave a talk in Los Angeles. I flew to New Zealand and have been experiencing the most magical locations. At a time that a lot of people are finding challenge, I'm finding a lot of blessings and expansion. That's not to
Mm.
negate the challenges that we're faced but I'm just saying that living this process that we're here to talk about, it kind of allows your life to blossom.
Hmm.
And amongst all this, I can see new opportunities to actually go bigger when things look scarier out there. And so
Mm-hmm.
I want to talk a little bit about that. I want to talk about what it is in our reality that allows that to happen. Jade, have you heard of something called the holographic layer?
Of course, of course, yes. Yes. This is essentially the part of ourselves that we move through time and space with and ascending through different realms and maybe to co-create with or even check out in another space ahead of time or behind where yeah it's a time and space where neither exist and
Yeah,
we're moving our energetics
yeah,
with the fields.
absolutely. In the ancient world, the Hindus would call this the Akash, the fine fabric that stores all of the memories that have ever taken place in the universe and all of the potentialities of what's to come. So being able to read the Akash is sort of like being able to read the fabric of space-time itself. However, this isn't just woo-woo spirituality or esotericism. This has actually been confirmed by theoretical physicists and neuroscientists. And so
Mm,
the holographic layer is a real thing. There is a book called the Science of the Akashic Field, where the author's talking about the Higgs boson particle basically creating matter out of nothing, out of the blueprint of energy. And the way that that matter is translated is determined by what lies in that blueprint. If you think about it, everything evolves in nature according to a blueprint. Like you plant a seed, that seed becomes a tree, right? The
mm,
seed and the tree are two completely different things, but the seed knows how to become a tree. Similarly,
mm,
a baby knows how to grow up and to be, an adult. And
mhm,
there's certain characteristics that that baby has that will determine the type of adult it will become. And that's largely due to things like genetics, etc. But what's even more fascinating is that this field influences us immensely in our lives. So David Bohm basically did a study where he was lobotomizing rats, and he took out 90% of their brain and found that he couldn't, they still had all their memories intact. He couldn't actually remove enough brain to start deleting the memories because these memories are actually stored in somewhere else. They're stored in a morphic resonant field. This is a concept that Rupert Sheldrake had basically pioneered. He's an evolutionary biologist. So basically what it's saying is that there's a certain field that determines where our memories are stored and where our unfolding it occurs from. Now, we can think of this theoretically, or we can actually get practical and start to work with this field. And this is
Mm.
something that we both do in our work, right, Jade?
Mm. Yeah, but before I share a little bit more about what I do and dive into some of what's coming up in the workshop, you have been traveling around the world, being invited to speak at many different conferences. I think Malibu's coming up for you as well. And it seems that wherever you go, you are interfacing with elements that you're already connected with almost. And neuroscientists are just present in your social circles. And what would you attribute some of these very, very aligned experiences with, where you're just manifesting and connecting and bringing in all the resources that you need? How would you break that down? Like, what are some of your favorite processes for connecting in and creating these experiences?
Mm, yeah. So to tap into that holographic field, we call that a vision. You know, when you have a clear vision in life and you know where you're heading, um, that very much becomes an anchor point. It's like it has like a gravity to it that then begins to direct you. You might not know all the details. That's for you to co-create with life. There's obviously going to be learning involved in that process, right? However, when you have a clear vision, everything starts to converge around that. So in this particular case, I got a clear vision that dropped on me in March. I was doing some work and processes, and I was really asking myself, it's like, okay, what needs to come next? I need to see a big shift in my life. Show me what needs to come next. And then this very clear vision came, and it was scary. It was a big departure from my life at the time. And I said, all right, I'm going to hop on the horse and I'm just going to go with this and see what happens. And as I started to take those initial steps in alignment with that vision, everything started to link up very beautifully. There was a lot of synchronicities and surprises happening along the way. This is what people tend to call manifestation or synchronicities. But the truth of the matter is that it's actually co-creating with the holographic field. And so the
Mm,
holographic field, is where our higher self lives. So in a way, it's not just about what the human wants and, I want a Lamborghini or I want to go to Dubai or something like that. It's actually about co-creating with a higher intelligence. So if
mm,
you're meant to do something, if it's part of your dharmic path or your karmic path, it will show up in your world. It will
mm.
be
That's
there for you.
exactly how I would refer to it through some
Yeah.
of the language that I use, which is different to yours. And I would say, full appreciation for the holographic universe and that which we are imprinting. But also, you did mention that co-creation element as well, which is where the flow starts to get
Mm.
activated and where more life force starts to be circulated through your body because you're listening in a very nuanced way where the energy is and where the chi is flowing and receiving back where it feels most alive for you,
Mm.
right?
Mhm.
And this is listening to one's own rhythm and listening to one's own dharma. And it's my understanding that when we listen to our dharma and we really lean into that and we serve and we show up along the way, that so much more coherence in the field becomes reflected back to us and available and
Yeah.
more energy because you're not down in the mud following other people's paths and getting distorted. You're following your own thread of energy.
Mm.
And yeah, and that's where a lot of magic happens. It doesn't mean that things are always easy, but life just continues to unfold and continues to support, right?
Totally. We all have a choice. The choice is we can go through hard, painstaking things for 40 years, or we can actually work it out faster when we work with the holographic layer. Now, it's not just the holographic layer. There's a couple other layers too, and this is what we teach when in our RISE program and in multidimensional health, that there's various layers, and that when we rebalance each of the layers, our intention flows through and it creates. And it's able to then rebalance the parts of ourselves where there might be blockages or trauma, etc., along the way, so that we don't have to keep going through the same negative loops over and over and over, and that we can actually rewrite our lives and rewrite where we want to go. So one of the things that I use is a process called quantum rebalancing. And quantum rebalancing is very simple. You basically relax, and then you set an intention, and you symbolically go through a threshold. And once you pass that threshold, you start working in the symbolic layers of the mind. You start to work directly with that holographic layer or that morphic resonant field of the mind. And that's where you can actually change the hardwiring of your life, the things that look impossible. And there's been studies done on this. You know, there's a study where they took basketball players, and there was three groups of basketball players. There was those that were, it was all about how well you could do the three-point shots. There was one group who didn't practice at all, and they didn't visualize. And then there was another group that visualized and practiced. And then there was another group that practiced but didn't visualize. And what they found was that the group that did the very best, of course, were the ones that visualized and practiced. And the ones that practiced but did not visualize, they came lower down. So it shows that when you actually visualize yourself doing it, that it actually enhances it, because now you're working with the inner sight, the inner senses, to co-create with that morphic resonant field. But the thing that I want to kind of bring up here is a lot of people talk about, oh yeah, you know, just manifest or just visualize what you want to do, but there is more to the story. And you know, what Jade and I have discovered is a full spectrum approach, because there's many layers of our being. And some of these layers contain trauma, they contain resistance, old injuries, blockages, or maybe psychological distortions that don't allow these things to come into place. And you know, people end up repeating affirmations over and over again with no results. So I'd like to actually ask you, Jade, is that when it comes to co-creation and self-healing, what are some of the most important things that people need to know about resolving their blockages in actually circulating life force within the body?
What comes to mind immediately is there's a saying, what's hardened in the body becomes hardened in the destiny, in our destiny. I think it's Wilhelm Reich that says that. I'm not sure on the pronunciation. I believe he's German. But our willpower and can only take us so far. And some of us are more kinesthetic or we're more audio. We respond better to, you know, sounds. And then whereas other people are a lot more visual, and they're able to drop in to the visual and construct a reality and hold that frequency for long enough that it starts to work with you and overlay and circulate and you know, send a ripple effect. But what if you can't? You know, what if you're trapped in chronic pain and disease and there's patterns on loop? Well, this is usually because what I've discovered, it's because there's trauma and holding patterns locked in the body and the mind. So yeah, sure, the mind, we work with both. So the mind unlocks the body and the body unlocks the mind. And whether you call, you know, life force energy, whether it's, you know, prana or chi or kundalini, when it's raised into such an overflow, there is a natural process where it starts to resolve and dissolve, and all of your body's innate intelligence mechanisms or healing mechanisms do come online. However, the space in which I work with people is really in a very a mindfully conscious and co-creative way where we are speeding up this process. And this process works to unlock the meridian lines and run energy through with more advanced conscious movement and very focused breath work. So we're actually working with the breath through the layers of the physical body, the subtle body, the mental body, the emotional body. And it really just returns a person back to themselves and dropping back through the distortions in their field and clearing and shifting themselves. via that, we're not supposed to do everything alone. And I think when we come into it together, we can really start to dial up this process. But yet it's not a completely done to. It's working in rhythm with that person and
Mm,
their dharma, and what wants to flow through them. But I think simply put, the principles are the body is so, so intelligent, as is our soul and our life force energy. And yet when we clear the blocks, we start to circulate and we start to harmonize with the field. And when we're circulating and harmonizing, things become a lot more fluid.
amazing. What I'm hearing here is there's a lot of benefits of running energy, like you say, through the body or working along these meridian lines in the physical body and the subtle bodies. And these benefits may include dissolving some of the chronic tension or some of the holding patterns, back pain, that type of thing, tension in the body. I think you've even told me that you've seen, people with chronic pain and that pain begins to dissolve and disappear in their lives, or the mental patterns that keep them maybe in a state of like almost like psychosis or just eating up a lot of energy, they begin to dissolve away. And now there's new space for spotting opportunities or for creating new relationships. But I think the biggest advantage of this is the fact that we actually start running this voltage that allows us to become creator beings, where we can basically think of something or tap into the thing that's right for us, and there it is, versus this process of trial and error. And what you said there is gold in that, so many people just try to push through. They're like, okay, if I want something, I'm just going to push hard. You see this in business all the time. People who run the bodies to the ground to push through towards whatever idea that they have, they want to bring about, and then they get there and they're unhappy and their bodies are
Mm,
broken. And there's another way to do it
burnout.
that's so much more potent. And whether it's business or relationships or anything, the process is the same, is that when you heal at that foundational
Mm.
level, effectively what happens is you become very clear on where you're meant to go, what your inner truth looks like, and what your service in the world looks like, right?
Yeah, your perception opens up when you're more embodied and these distortions have been alchemized. But it takes a return to trust,
Mm, yeah.
a return, a deconditioning, and a return to trust, a return to the body that it already knows exactly how to recalibrate, and working with other people that are aware of that while there's techniques, while holding that energy, that's when things become so much more
Yeah.
potent.
So the really cool part is Jada and I have been working together for I think 7 months now, and we've been basically combining our 20 plus years each of experience into a completely new process that we're calling embodied alchemy. And what embodied alchemy is it's taking the ability to tap into the holographic layer and to actually co-create with our higher selves, but then rebalance all of the layers where we may be storing tension or trauma or dis-ease along the way. So it actually ends up healing us, and then we get the things not only that we want, but the things that we really need. So in this, we've actually presenting this as a workshop, and you can see the link in the description below for the workshop. It's really cool. It's 2 days long. It's about an hour and a half each day. And on day one, I'm going to be covering the visioning process and the science behind that, how important a vision is, and how to actually tap into your higher self and figure out what you really want now. And then on day two, or the second part of it, Jade's going to be going into much more detail on what exactly, Jade?
In short, unlocking the body and
Mm,
returning to trust
right.
and unlocking the distortions. And as a process, everyone will have their own unique one, but having conversations with the body of where it's in conflict and where there's parts that are moving in opposite directions and bringing them together so that there can be resolution and in the body, but also drawing from a lot of what the ancients knew that some of these keys to unlock the plane where we become clearer, more coherent, where manifestation flows, where there's more alignment and not force. There's some hidden keys in our bodies and in our ligaments, which are lesser known. So I look forward to sharing those
Yeah.
to open up this access.
Yeah, and one of the reasons why this is more important than ever now is because in today's world, we're faced with so many challenges and so much information. I mean, you can go on the internet and find the teachings, the secret teachings of all ages anywhere, but people don't know what to do with them, right? They have the most profound memes that are just circulating on social media that are sharing these beautiful Rumi quotes or spiritual quotes, but people are still running into the same problems. They're still running into interference and lack of self-confidence or practices that start off working and then they don't work. Whereas what we've created is taking these lesser known teachings and assembling them into a cohesive structure where you can basically say, I would love to have this in my life, and you can actually go about following these steps and actually creating that in your life. And that's exactly what we need right now, where we're, in North America, we call it a Hail Mary play. And a Hail Mary play is basically when it's like everything looks like it's about to end or everything looks like it's crazy out there and you need one thing to kind of get you out of that situation. This is it. This is the thing that might turn your life around if you're facing illness or your finances are you're struggling with your finances, or maybe your relationships have just like hit a rock bottom and you don't know what to do. And even if you're doing pretty okay and you know that there's that next level, this is it. What we're sharing here is basically the process of working with the holographic field, with the quantum layer of reality. It's applied quantum mechanics, and also how to bring about healing in the body so that this can take place on a physical, material level for you. And as a result of this, this is what makes you so much more potent as a human being. This is where I see people go from unsure of themselves, questioning everything, to all of a sudden becoming leaders, and they're leading groups of people now, and they're doing amazing new roles out in the world, and they're vibrant, and they're showing up in their communities, and people are looking at them and their magnetism and saying, wow, you're fearless, but last time I met you, you were nervous about everything. And they said, not anymore. Because I've gone through this process. I've weeded out those parts within me that were afraid. And I know what I want now. So,
Yeah, I've had some incredible shifts with people.
yeah. We've actually run this workshop several times, and we've also taken a small group of people and run them through a longer process as this. So we've actually seen these results happen over and over and over again. And this, what we're presenting with Embodied Alchemy, is the latest iteration. You could say this is the most innovative form of our research together and our work together. So, if you've tried multidimensional health in the past, which was one of our previous workshops, this one's going to include a few different methods in there. It's going to be a little bit more direct, a little bit more streamlined as well. And so we really encourage you to join. It's going to be happening live on June 27th and 28th in Australia, New Zealand, and Bali, or Asia. And then it's going to be happening on the 26th and 27th if you're in North America. So the link to that is in the description below. And if you're watching this after the 26th and the 27th, there will be a replay available. So we'll put the replay link where you can watch this on demand anytime you want, and the link to that is in the description below. So any final words, Jade, for this interview?
I'm just really looking forward to sharing and running the processes, because it's one thing to know and then another thing to experience and drop in.
Yeah. Great. Well, thank you for joining me, and I hope you're all excited, and we hope to see you live. And if you can't see you live, you got to get the replay. There's no excuses. It might be the thing that really changes your 2025. All right. Take care.